History was one of those issues, and it was an important one. And this is what happened. I was reading conversion stories at that time, and I picked up a conversion story by a certain gentleman named John Henry Newman.
You're in the danger zone now, man.
His book, Apologia Pro Vita Sua, which was his conversion story, I read that, and then I read his very famous classic essay on the development of Christian doctrine. Okay, I knew this guy was smart. I mean, you can't read 3 pages of Newman without realizing you're dealing with a genius here. And I knew that he was one of the most famous Anglican convert to the Catholic Church of the 19th century, maybe the most famous convert of the entire 19th century. I don't know. But here's what happened, Matt. I'm reading his book, the essay on the development of Christian doctrine. And early on, page 5 or 6, I run into this. And I'm going to be reading a few passages from Newman for you so you can get the feel. I run into this, quoting Newman. History is not a creed or a catechism. History gives lessons rather than rules. Still, no one can mistake its general teaching in this matter, whether he accept it or stumble at it. Bold outlines and broad masses of color rise out of the records of the past. They may be dim, they may be incomplete, but they are definite. And this one thing, at least, is certain. The Christianity of history is not Protestantism. If ever there were a safe truth, it is this. Okay, so
that's a hard thing for someone who has thought that we were just getting back to the basics, that we were, well, you weren't a primitive Baptist, but there are primitive Baptists who'd say we're doing it just like they did in the days of Paul the Apostle.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, I assumed that my theology was simply a reflection of the New Testament's teaching, and we always wanted to get back to the New Testament. And
the old-time religion, you know?
Yeah, and because of that, we had a tendency to not look very seriously or very closely at what Christians of the 2nd century believed, or the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th. So I'm reading Newman, and I hear this, and I'm thinking, what? So I flip over like one more page, and I run into this. To be deep in history is to cease to be Protestant. And I'm like, this guy is like, I had never heard anybody state something that bluntly and that boldly. But he went on to elaborate. I flip over one more page or so, and this is what I read, Matt. Again, quoting Newman, this utter incongruity between Protestantism and historical Christianity is a plain fact, whether regarded in its early or in its later centuries. So much must the Protestant grant that if such a system of doctrine as he would now introduce ever existed in early times, it has been clean swept away as if by a deluge, suddenly, silently, and without memorial. So I'm reading this, and at this point, my mind is beginning to race. And I'm thinking, have I heard this guy, I mean, clearly? Is this what he's saying? I mean, is Newman actually saying to me, an ordained Baptist minister, is he saying that if the system of doctrine that I hold and that I've been teaching in my church, if this system of doctrine ever existed in the early centuries of the church, it has been clean swept away and there's no evidence of it?
Yeah.
It's quite a challenge.